Before her rebirth, she was an outstanding hacker. After rebirthing, she found herself in the body of a woman named Rachel. Unfortunately, the moment she opened her eyes, she was choked almost to death by the husband of the original owner of this body. Fortunately, she survived. Without hesitation, she signed the divorce agreement, preparing to embrace her supposedly miserable life. To her surprise, her mother in this lifetime had left her a vast fortune. She turned the tables, rushing back to the mansion to evict her father, stepmother, and half-sister, avenging herself. Given the chance to relive her life, she vowed to live it to the fullest. Leveraging her past identity as a hacker, she built her hacking empire. When her ex-husband came to see her, her career and love life were already going smoothly. But suddenly one day she found herself excessively sleepy and prone to morning sickness. Damn it! She had conceived before the divorce. When her ex-husband Victor learned about this, he forcibly took her back home. Wait. Victor's actions were increasingly unusual. He not only took her shopping for clothes but also shielded her forehead with his hand when she almost bumped her head.
Chapter 1. Rachel, you fucking bitch. Go to hell. On the king-size bed, the man's face was a mask of fury, his black eyes burning with hate. The veins stood out on his forehead and his arms as he wrung the woman.
She couldn't breathe. Rachel Bennett opened her eyes wide, still groggy from sleep. She felt a pair of hands on her neck, choking the life out of her. She was confused and consumed by fear and panic. As her lungs started screaming for air, her survival instinct kicked in. She raised her hands to her throat, trying to fend off her attacker. But the man wouldn't budge. Instead, he tightened his grip on her neck, causing her face to turn a deep red and her vision to blur. Bam! The door was thrown open and the butler rushed in.
He hurried to the bed and grabbed the man's arm, shouting, "Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Sullivan, please let go of her. You're killing her. She deserves to die. Mr. Sullivan, please. If you kill her, your grandma will roll over in her grave. She won't be able to rest in peace." Grandma? Hearing the butler's words, Victor Sullivan loosened his grip slightly. Rachel grabbed the opportunity to escape his grasp and crawl away. Her back hit the headboard, and she stayed there curled in a ball, looking at Victor with wide, fearful eyes. "Mr. Sullivan, be patient. Today your divorce will become official. You will never see her again. Spare her life for her mother's sake. Her mother once saved your grandma. Remember? Please calm down." Victor seemed to see the reason behind his butler's words. He got out of bed, put on his pajamas in silence. When he was done, he turned around and spoke in a voice cold as ice. "I'll tell Ivan to send the divorce papers here. Sign it and then get the hell out. I don't want to see your face ever again." With a final look filled with hatred, he left the room, followed by the butler.
The door slammed behind him, the sound hurting Rachel's ears. She covered herself with the bed covers, still in shock. Her face was deathly pale, her heart fluttering in her chest. She lowered her head and looked at her body. She was completely naked and dark bruises marred her otherwise flawless skin. The adrenaline coursing through her veins had dulled the pain until now. But when the worst had passed, Rachel felt that her entire body was sore. She hurt everywhere. Rachel couldn't find any women's clothes in the closet. It contained only men's shirts and black suits. She grabbed a shirt and a pair of suit pants and put them on. On top of the pain she already felt, she could feel a terrible headache coming on. Groaning, she walked to the sofa and sat down. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Memories that didn't belong to her started flooding her senses. Moments later, she opened her eyes again. Those memories belonged to the former owner of this body, the woman named Rachel. After quietly sorting things out in her mind, she finally came to two conclusions. She had been reborn from Shalia Davis to Rachel Bennett. The one inhabiting this body before her was a worthless girl madly in love with Victor. Her mother had gotten sick and died a while ago, and her father was a pathetic scumbag. There was a knock on the door. The sound startled Rachel out of her reverie.
A cold voice came from the other side of the door. "May I come in?"
She hastily rolled up the bottom of the pants and hurried to open the door. A tall and dull-looking man stood there, holding a stack of papers in his hand. Ivan. Rachel quickly searched her memories and retrieved the man's name.
His face expressionless. Ivan Chavez handed her the documents and a pen. "Mr. Sullivan asked me to see you out as soon as you signed the divorce papers."
Rachel glanced at the documents, recalling what the butler had said earlier. Today was the second wedding anniversary of Victor and Rachel, but from now on, it would also be the end of their marriage. Was the divorce agreement cooked up in less than an hour? Victor must really hate Rachel. She took the agreement and started turning pages, signing Rachel Bennett neatly wherever it was necessary. She was done in less than 30 seconds. "There you go," Rachel said as she returned the papers to Ivan and clicked the pen.
Ivan looked at her in astonishment, eyebrows raised. He didn't expect it to be so easy. When Victor asked him to bring over the agreement, he told Ivan that Rachel didn't want to sign it, so he might have to use force. "Don't you want to read it first?" Ivan said, still not reaching out to take the papers.
Rachel raised her eyebrows and replied flatly, "No."
"Aren't you curious about what you are getting out of this divorce?" Ivan was frowning now, looking more and more confused.
Rachel raised her eyebrows while hitching up her pants. She flashed Ivan a smile. "There is no need to read it. I know that there are two possible outcomes. One is that I am in a world of debt and go bankrupt soon, and the other is that I have to leave this marriage without a penny. I am sure Victor put together a team of exceptional lawyers to work on the best option for him."
Ivan's eyes darkened. He took the divorce papers and said, "Mr. Sullivan just wants you to walk away without getting any of his assets."
"Well, make sure you thank him on my behalf." Rachel really didn't give a shit about it at all. It was this body's former occupant that loved Victor, not her. She didn't even care if the man lived or died. She didn't want a violent man like him for a husband. A man that would strangle his own wife to death. She now had another chance to live and she intended to make the best of it.
Ivan's eyes fell on Rachel's neck. "Would you like me to call a doctor for you?"
Rachel was at a loss for a moment. Then she remembered the bruises around her neck and raised her hand to touch them. The feeling of suffocation came back to her and she had to shake her head to get rid of it. "No thanks. I'm fine. It's not that bad," she replied, shrugging.
"Then please pack your things." Ivan's tone was back to normal, cold and businesslike.
She nodded and left Victor's bedroom barefoot, still pulling up her pants. She had a long way to go to reach her own bedroom. Victor hated Rachel so much that he didn't even want to bump into her in the corridor, so her room was all the way to the other side of the huge house. It took her nearly 2 minutes to get there. Her bedroom had originally been a storage room, but soon after Rachel and Victor's wedding, Rachel moved in here. She pushed the door open and walked through the narrow doorway nimbly. The room was really small. It only contained a bed and a dressing table. The furniture was so close together that there was no room to walk around properly. Rachel didn't have much to pack. Except for her cosmetics strewn all over the dressing table and a few clothes, she didn't have much else. She changed into her own clothes and stuffed the rest of her things into a suitcase. "Okay, I'm all packed. I'm leaving now. I hope I will never see you again, Ivan. Goodbye," Rachel said in a carefree, cool voice as she dragged her suitcase across the hall. "Rachel, where do you think you are going?" Suddenly, the elevator doors slid open, revealing a woman in a business suit. Her high heels clicked on the marble floor, the sound crisp and curt. matching her sharp voice perfectly.
Chapter 2.
Rachel stopped to look at the woman approaching her. Alice. Alice Jenkins was her half-sister, a veritable two-faced bitch. As she stood in front of Rachel, Alice grinned. "My dear sister, are you moving out?" Rachel rolled her eyes at her and put on a fake smile. "It's been so long since we last saw each other. Why do you still like asking dumb questions so much? Does a bear shit in the woods?" Her remark left Alice livid. But she soon suppressed her anger, changing into an innocent expression again. "I'm just trying to show you some concern. How can you think of me that way? Concern? That was funny." She just wanted to mock her. With a face devoid of emotion, Ivan intervened in their conversation. He reminded Rachel, "Mrs. Sullivan, it's time for you to leave. Mr. Sullivan is about to come back." She pointed at Alice and said to Ivan, "It's not that I don't want to leave. It's just that there's a mad dog blocking my path. I'm afraid that she'll bite me." Ivan was rendered speechless. Alice began to shed crocodile tears. "Rachel, I know you're getting divorced today. I was really worried that you'll be sad, so I left my work early to come to see you. How could you say that to me? I'm your sister." "Shut up. I don't have a dog for a sister." Rachel quickly distanced herself from Alice and turned to Ivan again. "Ivan, shall we?" His temples began to ache and he failed to maintain his stern expression for a moment. Left with no other choice, he said to Alice, "Miss Jenkins, please excuse us." Alice bit her lower lip. Her eyes were fiery with rage at this moment, but they were covered by her bangs. "Ivan, an untrained dog cannot comprehend human language," Rachel said to taunt her. That remark made Alice fume with rage. She clenched her fists and glared at Rachel. Upon seeing Alice restrain her anger, Rachel tilted her head a little, smiling to vex Alice even more. The arrogant smile on Rachel's face annoyed Alice. What the hell is going on? Rachel is usually timid and she's always obedient to me. Why did her personality turn upside down?
"Miss Jenkins," Ivan called out, his voice held a hint of impatience.
Alice pressed her lips, hiding her suspicions. "Ivan, I'm not implying that I don't want my sister to leave. It's just that Victor asked me to see how things are going here." Both Ivan and Rachel were surprised to hear that. Victor knew that I was coming here, so he specifically told me to watch Rachel pack up and leave. He said that according to the divorce agreement, Rachel wasn't allowed to take anything that belongs to the Sullivan family. I'm just here to make sure she upholds the agreement. Alice looked at the suitcase beside Rachel. "So, Rachel, could you please open your suitcase? I need to check if you took anything that doesn't belong to you." Rachel frowned at that. "It only contains a few clothes. I didn't take anything that belongs to the Sullivans." Alice grabbed the suitcase from her and said, "I'm afraid it's not up to you to decide. If you didn't take anything inappropriate with you, why are you so afraid of letting me see the contents of your suitcase?" After that, she laid the suitcase on the ground and opened it. Inside it, several clothes had been piled up in a mess. It seemed that Rachel really didn't take anything valuable with her. Alice gritted her teeth. She didn't expect that Rachel was telling the truth. Unwilling to let her go so easily, Alice rummaged through the clothes. It was as if she wasn't going to stop until she had found a piece of evidence that could prove Rachel had stolen something from the Sullivans. The only contents of the suitcase were Rachel's clothes and cosmetics, and yet Alice kept rummaging through the suitcase for over 10 minutes. "Are you done checking?" Rachel glanced down at Alice. "I'm just following Victor's orders." "It's better to check thoroughly," Alice replied softly. "Fine. Go ahead and check those clothes for as long as you want. I don't want them anymore." Rachel shook her head. The bruises on her body still hadn't healed yet. She really didn't want to waste any more time with Alice, and she didn't want to wait for Victor to come back and try to strangle her again. Now that she had said her piece, Rachel walked past Alice and towards the elevator and pushed the button. Ivan followed suit. Ding. Before long, the elevator arrived at the 3rd floor. The sliding doors opened slowly. Just before Rachel could walk in, she suddenly felt a chill. The temperature around her dropped several degrees, making her shiver and stop in her tracks. The first thing she saw was a pair of shiny leather shoes. When she raised her head, she caught sight of Victor's aloof face. "Mr. Sullivan." Ivan was the first to react, bowing his head respectfully.
Rachel, it seems that you've forgotten what I told you this morning. There was a flash of warning in Victor's eyes, and he sounded ill-tempered.
The second she saw him, Rachel thought of how Victor choked her this morning. She trembled with fear, wary of what he might do to her. Standing in attention, she said, "No, I remember." "Oh, you do? Then why the hell are you still here?" Victor asked, striding towards her. Rachel kept pacing backwards until her back was against the wall. She closed her eyes for a second and then braced herself to look into his eyes. "You should ask Alice." I was about to leave, but she appeared out of nowhere and delayed me. That's why Rachel was halfway to finishing her explanation when Alice suddenly interrupted her. "How could you lie like that?" she asked with tearful eyes. "I'm not lying." At this moment, Rachel was cursing Alice in her head. If it weren't for this woman, she would have left an hour ago and she wouldn't have run into Victor. Damn it.
Do you honestly think I won't try to kill you? All of a sudden, he strangled Rachel with his hand, slamming her head against the wall.
She didn't see that coming, but she managed to grab Victor's hand instinctively. The pain coming from the back of her head made her dizzy. Victor. Rachel called out with difficulty.
"How dare you test my patience over and over," said Victor. With every passing second, Rachel was losing her consciousness. She couldn't break free from Victor's grasp at all. Upon seeing the situation, Ivan decided to intervene. He hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Mr. Sullivan, if something happens to Mrs. Sullivan, those bastards in the board of directors will use that against you. If that happens, your plan of concentrating equity will be hampered. Fuck off."
Chapter 3. He didn't want to die. She used the last of her strength to push Victor's hand away. Once she was able to catch her breath a little, she stared at him, her eyes turning red.
"If I die here and now, then I will die as your wife, still a member of the Sullivans. Someday when you die, you will be buried next to me, and I will haunt you beyond the afterlife."
Rachel said those words with difficulty. Her face had turned red due to the suffocation. Gradually, Rachel had no strength to struggle. Little by little, she could feel her consciousness slipping.
"Who do you think you are? You don't deserve to be buried in my family's mausoleum." Victor sounded indifferent. "If you die, I'll cremate your body and throw the ashes into a bin. A woman like you deserves to rest with the rubbish."
Rachel burst into laughter.
"Why are you laughing?" Victor asked.
"Even if you throw my ashes into a bin, it won't change the fact that I'm your legal wife and I'm part of your family tree. You loathe me, don't you? Sorry, but you'll never get rid of me even if I die." Victor stared daggers at her as he strengthened his grip, lifting her in midair. Consequently, Rachel yelped in pain and tears rolled down her cheeks. Just when she was hallucinating of the shameless couple in her previous life, Victor suddenly let go of her. Rachel fell to the ground. She felt like every bone in her body had been broken, and even the slightest movement made her groan in pain. She coughed violently and gasped for air, breathing with so much difficulty. Ivan glanced at Rachel indifferently and lowered his head. "Mr. Sullivan, it's all my fault. I didn't urge her to leave in time." I'm willing to suffer the consequences. Alice turned pale with fear as she watched Victor beat up Rachel. She got down on her knees and begged, Victor, this is my fault. I didn't check Rachel's suitcase faster. That's why she had the opportunity to lie and buy time for herself. Rachel could feel her chest tightening as she coughed over and over. I didn't take anything that belongs to you, she said in a hoarse voice.
Victor took out some wet wipes to clean his hand that had touched Rachel's neck. Disgust was evident on his face. You didn't take anything? You bought all your clothes using my money. How dare you say that you didn't take my stuff?
Rachel pursed her lips, unable to refute his logic. On her wedding day, Alice had burned all the clothes that Rachel had bought herself. Alice said that her clothes were too vulgar, and Victor probably wouldn't want to see her wearing them.
Take off her clothes and throw her out. After saying that, Victor left along with Ivan without hesitation.
Only when those two had left did Alice get up and walk towards Rachel. Her previous ostensibly tenderness had now disappeared. Rachel, you married Victor and slept with him, but so what? In the end he kicked you out. You wanted to make him fall in love with you, didn't you? That's never going to happen. Do you really think I asked you to wear heavy makeup and put on weight because Victor likes it? This is hilarious. I can't believe you actually fell for that. No man will ever like a fat and idiotic woman like you. I was messing with you. I just wanted to make him hate you even more. Rachel's face turned ghastly pale. When she heard what Alice said, she didn't even look at her. She was indifferent to Alice's words and did not seem to hear her provocation. Seeing that Rachel wasn't responding, Alice gritted her teeth in anger. Why are you looking at me like that? Huh. You're so pathetic. Rachel chuckled, trying to endure the pain. She was sure that she had suffered an internal injury. Just the act of talking was painful enough to make her feel like her organs were being twisted together. But she couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. Otherwise, Alice would revel in torturing her. Evil was in that woman's nature. What did you say? Alice's eyes widened in surprise. When Rachel sneered at her, she was goaded. I said. Rachel took a deep breath to alleviate the pain in her chest. You are living a miserable, ridiculous life. You're the most pathetic person I've ever met. Being called a bastard must make you feel inferior, doesn't it? You've been trying your best to steal everything I had since we were kids, because I'm the Bennett family's legitimate daughter, and you're just a dirty little bastard. You are always unpresentable. Bitch. Shut the fuck up. Alice screamed. It seemed that Rachel had struck a sore spot. Rachel grinned and continued, These past 2 years I trusted you, and yet you deceived me by taking advantage of my desire to draw Victor's attention. You fooled me into doing stupid things in front of him so that he would loathe me. At first he didn't feel anything for me, and then he began to hate me. And now he's too disgusted to even lay eyes on me. You must be proud of this accomplishment, aren't you? Alice clenched her fists, looking at Rachel with hatred. Well, you should blame yourself for being so stupid. You're right. I was stupid, Rachel admitted. Right now she felt ashamed for what she had done in the past 2 years. Despite being the daughter of a rich and powerful family, she had lived a pathetic life. How did she end up this way? You have a clear estimation of yourself. The look on Alice's face made it seem like she was the winner between them. I almost died, and that's enough to wake me up. I'm not stupid like you after all. Rachel wanted to make sure that she didn't have any broken bones, so she propped herself up using her hands. However, the pain was far too much for her to bear, so she fell down once more. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she groaned in pain, her hands pressing against the hard floor. The veins on the back of her hands were bulging because she was exerting every ounce of strength she could muster. Alice's face turned grim. Your end is near, Rachel. How dare you talk to me like that? Remember, you are no longer Victor's wife, and are therefore no longer part of the Sullivan family. His grandmother is dead now, so there's no one left to protect you. If you have a brain in that empty head of yours, you should kneel down and beg me to persuade our father to allow you to go home." When Alice mentioned Victor's grandmother, a faraway look appeared on Rachel's face. Victor's grandmother was the one who chose Rachel to be his wife. Not long after she married into the Sullivan family, the old lady died of illness. His grandmother used to be Rachel's protector when she was still alive. During that time, Rachel lived a dignified life within the Sullivan family's residence. "Do you think you'll be able to marry Victor and share the Sullivan group with him after I divorce him?" Upon hearing that, Alice stood proudly. "You were able to do it, so I probably can as well." "You can't," Rachel said in a weak yet firm tone. "Why are you so confident that Victor will agree to marry you? Just because he's also an illegitimate child, you think you're good enough to be his wife? Your mother is a mistress, a homewrecker. Unlike you, Victor was born before his father even got married. And his mother never destroyed the man's marriage later. With that being said, you will never deserve to be Victor's wife," said Rachel. Chapter 4. Alice's fingernails were digging into her palms, and her chest was heaving up and down due to the anger she was feeling. All of a sudden she pulled Rachel up and slapped her face. The slap left a palm print on Rachel's face. Blood oozed from the corner of her mouth. Obviously, Alice didn't hold back when she slapped Rachel. Gnashing her teeth, Alice said to the servants, "You two hold her up." Rachel's vision was fading because of how hard she had gotten hit. The servants didn't dawdle, and they immediately followed Alice's command. Each of them held one of Rachel's arms to restrict her. With a murderous gaze, Alice clasped Rachel's chin, forcing her to raise her head. The imprint of an open hand was evident on the right side of her face. It was red and swollen. Once more Alice raised her hand and snarled, "You're quite glib, aren't you? Say something again, I dare you." "Alice, do you know what my life motto is?" Rachel spat out a mouthful of blood, trying her best to keep her eyes open. Her almond-shaped eyes looked as cold as ice. Her steely gaze was enough to intimidate people. 10 eyes for an eye and 10 teeth for a single tooth," Rachel sneered. "As long as I live and breathe, I will hunt you down to the ends of the earth, and I will make you suffer for what you've done to me today." For a moment Alice was startled by her gaze, but she soon came to her senses. "Don't try to frighten me with that threat. Do you think a loser like you could scare me?" she said through gritted teeth. Right after she said that, Alice hit Rachel's face until it swelled up. Her anger was finally quenched when she got tired. She looked at Rachel dead in the eyes and said to the servants, "Didn't you hear Mr. Sullivan earlier?" "Yes, ma'am. He ordered us to remove her clothes and throw her out," a servant said, lowering her gaze. Alice massaged her sore wrist, smiling with satisfaction before she decided to strut away. Before long, the servants stripped Rachel down to her pelt, leaving only a set of silk underwear to cover her naked body. Unable to resist, Rachel closed her eyes and gave up struggling. She just let them do whatever they wanted to her. She knew very well that her survival was now the most important thing. The servants supported her on each side as they walked towards the door. After all, Rachel was once Victor's wife. Even though the servants loathed her, they still didn't want to bear witness to her embarrassment. Along the way, she didn't see anyone else besides the maids who were escorting her.
Meanwhile, the butler knocked on the door of the study. "Come in," said Victor. The butler entered the room and said to him, "Mr. Sullivan, Ms. Bennet has been thrown out as you've commanded." Victor was currently reading a contract, so he didn't raise his head when he replied. "Did she say anything?" "No," said the butler. With a snort, Victor thought of what Rachel had said earlier. His eyes brimmed with cruelty as he shut the folder and ordered, Tell them to throw that bitch as far as they can. Don't let that woman disgrace my doorstep." The butler was shocked to hear that. "Yes, sir," he answered reluctantly.
Inside a cramped basement somewhere south of the city, Rachel suddenly woke up, sitting upright and screaming. She was breathing heavily and looking ahead in horror. Just then someone pushed the door open from outside. Seeing that she was awake, the man set aside the medicine he had prepared and walked to the bed.
"Miss Bennet, you're finally awake," he said with concern.
Rachel looked at him vigilantly, calming down at once. She tried to recall the man's name because he looked familiar. However, she couldn't remember who he was at the moment. She looked down at her body and remembered that she had been thrown out of Victor's house, half naked and almost dying. But now she was still alive, sitting here in a tacky yet neat floral shirt with matching pants. "Who are you?" Rachel's voice was hoarse, and it seemed like she was wary of him.
"We've met before, but you were still a child back then. It's normal that you don't remember me. I'm Andy Torres, your mother's private lawyer." The man smiled at her.
"Andy? Mom's lawyer?" Rachel remembered that her mother did have a lawyer. "Did you save me?"
"I did. When I called you, a passerby answered the phone and said that you had fainted. But don't worry, I didn't see anything. The man who found you covered you with a coat, and then I carried you to my car and drove you back here," Andy explained.
"Then why am I wearing these clothes?"
"Oh, I asked an old lady who lives next door to change it for you."
Rachel breathed a sigh of relief, but she still frowned. "You mentioned that you called me. What for?" Her mother died when she was 13. Andy said that he was her mother's lawyer, but Rachel hadn't seen him for so many years. It was suspicious that he suddenly showed up this time.
Andy got up and walked out of the room. Moments later, he returned with a document and gave it to Rachel. "This is your mother's last will and testament," he said.
My mother's will? Doubt filled Rachel's eyes. If she remembered correctly, her mother departed this world so suddenly that she didn't have the time to make a will. Otherwise, Rachel's useless father and his mistress wouldn't have been so reckless and high-profile.
"Yes, she entrusted me to be the witness of her will when she was still alive. She told me to make this will public and give it to you on your 24th birthday."
Now that Andy had mentioned that, Rachel remembered that her birthday was the same day of her divorce with Victor.
"It's clearly stated in this will that you will inherit all of your mother's assets, including 15% of the Bennett Group's shares and the villa she lived in before she died," Andy continued.
Rachel turned to the last page and she saw the name Elisa Bennett on the bottom right corner of the paper. "Mr. Torres, how many days have I been unconscious?" asked Rachel.
3 days.
She then put away the document and got out of bed. "In that case, they've been living comfortably for 3 more days. That's enough for them." After saying that, Rachel walked towards the door.
"Miss Bennett, where are you going?" asked Andy.
Rachel stopped at the door, glancing at the will in her hand. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Where else? I'm going back home and kick out my father, his bitch of a mistress, and their daughter." With that, Rachel opened the door and strode out.
Andy was taken aback by what she said for a moment. Somehow, he saw a glimpse of Elisa during her youth. As he watched Rachel walk away, Andy put on his suit jacket and followed her quickly.
In the Bennett family's house in the Riverside Villa district north of the city, Rachel and Andy stood in front of the door. They had been ringing the doorbell dozens of times, and yet nobody was answering. Annoyed by the constant ringing, finally the housekeeper trotted outside and shouted, "Stop it! Who is there? A debt collector or something? Stop ringing it. You're driving me crazy." Right after she stopped talking, the housekeeper opened the side door and looked at the visitors with a frown. She was stunned to see who they were. Rachel put on a sardonic smile. Well, we do have a debt to collect. It's you. The housekeeper's face turned pale, and a chill ran down her spine because of how intimidating Rachel looked. Chapter 5. Rachel encountered the housekeeper, Viola Lyons, and instructed her to clean her bedroom. However, Viola did not dare to respond due to her fear, as Alice had already taken over Rachel's former bedroom. Rachel then entered the living room of the house and found Alice, her father Jack Jenkins, and her stepmother Caroline Jenkins enjoying a harmonious family scene. Her arrival disrupted this harmony. All of a sudden they heard someone clapping. The happiness dissipated from their faces when they saw who was at the door. Rachel tilted her head and put down her hands. What a happy family you all are. I'm so moved by this scene. What about you, Mr. Torres? On their way to this villa, Andy learned that Rachel had been suffering these past few years. Initially, he believed that even after Elisa's death, Rachel would live a comfortable life because she was the lady of a rich family, and she later married Victor, a business tycoon. Andy was filled with rage when he saw how happy Jack and his new family were. He just stood there looking at them with anger. Rachel, what are you doing here? Alice was the first to react. Rachel scoffed at her, walked to the sofa and sat down. Meanwhile, Andy happened to hear Alice's question. He followed Rachel and stood behind her.
Miss Jenkins, this is Miss Bennett's house. If she wants to come back, she's permitted to do so whenever she wants.
Who do you think you are? Was I even talking to you? Alice scolded Andy and glared at him.
Courteously, he replied, I am her personal lawyer.
Alice snorted with disdain. Everyone is claiming to be a lawyer these days. Rachel, Victor has thrown you out of his house and you have nowhere else to go. Do you think you can come back and live here just because you hired a lawyer? No way. Get the hell out of here. You're not welcome in this household. After saying that, Alice strode forward and tried to grab Rachel's arm, intending to drag her outside. But to her surprise, Rachel managed to dodge her. Seconds later, Alice felt a stinging sensation in her neck, causing her to groan in pain and cover her neck. Rachel, on the other hand, stood calmly as she held the necklace that Alice was wearing just now, albeit it had been stained with blood now. How dare you? Alice lost her temper. She immediately tried to hit Rachel, but there was an imperceptible smile on Rachel's face. Just before Alice's hand could reach her face, Rachel grabbed Alice's wrist and then she kicked her knee. And then she let go of her. Alice cried out in pain. She dropped to her knees, falling to the ground. Alice. Caroline quickly went to her daughter's side to help her up. She never imagined that this bitch Rachel would dare to hit her daughter. Rachel looked at the necklace in her hand. If I remember correctly, this necklace is supposed to be mine, right? With a pale face, Alice gritted her teeth trying to take back the necklace. That's mine. However, Rachel withdrew her hand and sat back on the sofa. This necklace is worth at least millions of dollars. Alice, didn't you tell me that you had no money to buy a dress worth only $10,000? You even manipulated me into buying it for you, remember? When did you become so rich to have a necklace like this? That statement made Alice's face turn ghastly pale. That's none of your business. The necklace is mine. Give it back or I'm calling the police to arrest you for robbery. Rachel crossed her legs, leaned back against the sofa and didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at the three of them in silence. Alice was scared by the way she was looking at them. She suddenly remembered what Rachel had told her 3 days ago. I will make you suffer for what you've done to me today. You see, sapphires are rare. That's why every sapphire is engraved with a special serial number with a laser. Alice, you said that this necklace is yours, so you must know what that serial number is, right? Rachel said with derision. Alice was dumbfounded. The serial number? Did sapphires have numbers? How was she supposed to know that? She just took this necklace from Rachel's jewelry box that she left at home. Looking a bit guilty, Alice retorted, "Who will pay special attention to a stupid serial number when they buy a necklace? The number is too long to remember." "Oh, you don't remember, do you?" Rachel didn't seem to care what Alice had said. She just put on a sardonic smile to mock her. "It's okay. Since you bought this necklace, you should have an appraisal certificate. The serial number is written on it too. Once the police come, just take out the certificate and show it to them." Alice began to panic. Hesitantly, she stammered, What? Are you going to tell me that you lost the appraisal certificate?" Rachel saw through Alice's farce, so she interrupted her and continued, "It's not a big deal if you lost the certificate. The police will look into it." Alice's face darkened. At this moment, Rachel paused when she noticed that Alice fell silent. Seconds later, she asked, "What's the matter? Didn't you want to call the police to arrest me for robbery? Go ahead, call them." Chapter 6. Since Alice doesn't want to call the police, Mr. Torres, why don't you call them and ask them to come over? Right after Caroline heard that, she said, "Rachel, please don't be angry. Alice was just being silly when she took your necklace. We're a family. Besides, she's your little sister. If the police come here and make a big deal out of this, people will mock us." Caroline lowered her head, looking like a kind and nurturing mother. Rachel was already familiar with that look. Caroline was skilled at playing the innocent, and it was this side of her that beguiled Jack. This was also the reason he turned a blind eye to his daughter, Rachel, and allowed Alice and Caroline to walk all over her. Rachel didn't respond. She just sat quietly on the sofa staring at them. She knew that Caroline was more composed than Alice. Caroline would never ask for Jack's help directly. Instead, she would do something to win his pity so that he would speak for her. Since Caroline wouldn't show her true colors easily, Rachel was in no hurry to speak up. After a long time, Caroline grew impatient when she saw that Rachel had no intention of speaking. A forethought of malice flashed through Caroline's mind. A few days ago, Alice had told her that Rachel seemed to turn into a different person. She didn't buy her words back then, but now it seemed that Rachel had really changed. How dare she come back here and put on airs as if she owned the house?
Andy broke the silence. "Miss Bennett, I have called the police."
"Rachel Bennett. How dare you?" Alice shouted with eyes wide open. "Why shouldn't I do it?" Rachel stared back at her. At this moment she was exuding a laid-back demeanor. "You..." Alice was rendered speechless and her eyes turned red with anger.
"I did." Andy put his phone away and took a step forward. The policeman saw the mess in the living room and frowned. "What's going on here?"
Alice covered her injured arm and pointed at Rachel. "She did this. She took the chance to throw out an accusation first. Sir, that woman threw a vase at me on purpose. Look at me. I'm injured all over thanks to her." Alice's hair was in disarray and she looked disheveled, while Rachel sat there safe and sound. At first glance, it looked like Alice was telling the truth. The policemen jumped to a conclusion when they saw Rachel's calmness. It was as if they weren't going to listen to her side of the story anymore. Noticing the look on the policemen's faces, Andy said, Sir. Caroline interrupted Andy. At this moment, she pretended to be a real refined and forgiving lady from a rich family. She walked up to the policemen, smiling at them modestly. "Nothing happened. These two girls were just messing around. Thank you for taking the time to come here. Allow me to compensate you for the long drive. You can go back now. I hope we didn't delay your work." As she spoke, Caroline glanced at Viola. Consequently, Viola understood Caroline's order and took out some cash from her pocket to give to the police officers.
The policeman exchanged glances and said, "We're not going to accept your bribe. Get that dirty money out of our faces." Those words made Viola shiver in fear.
Caroline smiled apologetically. Yes, of course. I didn't mean to offend you. It was really kind of you to come here, but this is just a petty squabble between sisters. This silly game isn't worth your precious time. Just a petty squabble between sisters? No. Alice wanted to proceed with her accusation when she noticed that the policeman favored her over Rachel. How could her mother not know what she was thinking? But now was not the time. If this incident were to break out, it would make Caroline look ridiculous in front of her friends. She glanced at Alice out of the corner of her eye, still wearing a smile. Yes, these girls were just being naughty. Well, if that's the case. The police could sense that things weren't that simple. However, Caroline insisted that the girls were just messing around, so they really couldn't do anything about it. After all, this was a family matter. They didn't want to trouble themselves over this. Sir, may I ask you some questions? Rachel suddenly broke her silence, got up and looked at them with a hint of a smile.
Rachel! Jack suddenly chimed in. Stop it!
Chapter 7. Jack hadn't spoken a word since Rachel came in. And now the first sentence he said to her were to make her stop. Upon hearing that, Rachel looked at him with a sneer. Moments ago, when Alice threw that vase at her, Rachel noticed that Jack wanted to stop Alice. But eventually he sat back down and did nothing. But when the vase hit Alice, making her knock down the shelf by accident, he stood up faster than everyone else. He rushed to Alice's side, shielding her from the falling glass bottles. As a matter of fact, when Rachel was on her way here, she recollected every memory she had of the past. Everything happened so fast and was so overwhelming, so she thought she might have forgotten something nice about Jack. Unfortunately, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember anything good her father had ever done for her. Both Jack's words and actions just now confirmed her point. Dad, I just have some questions to ask the police officers. Why are you so nervous? After hearing what Caroline said earlier, the policeman felt that Rachel was looking to cause trouble. One of them asked impatiently, "What is it?" Rachel looked at him, smiling and looking so pure. When the policeman saw her innocent smile and charming eyes, he began to doubt whether she had really hurt someone. Sir, does the owner of a house have the right to allow and prohibit anyone to enter their house? Rachel spoke unhurriedly. The sound of her voice sounded like music to their ears. Of course. The policeman frowned because he found the question meaningless. What if someone is living in a house, but the owner has never agreed to letting them live there? Is it called trespassing? Should the owner call the police on these people? Rachel blinked innocently.
It is trespassing. And of course, the owner should call the police. Why are you asking such questions with obvious answers? It's a complete waste of our time. The police's patience had worn thin.
Rachel snapped her fingers and said, "Thank you for your answer, sir. In that case, please help me drive these people away from my home and my problem will be solved." Everyone was dumbfounded. Caroline was the first to realize what Rachel was implying. In an unnatural voice she said, "Rachel, what are you talking about? I know you've always had a problem with me and Alice, but you need to stop this. If you have any grievances and complaints, just let me know and I promise you will adjust our behaviors accordingly. And as for what happened this time, I'll ask Alice to apologize to you, okay? These policemen must be very busy." "You shouldn't." "Oh, don't worry, Caroline. I'm not gonna forget about what Alice has done, but she'll have to wait her turn, okay?" said Rachel. Caroline didn't get to finish talking and it got on her nerves. At this point, Alice lost her temper again. "Rachel Bennett, you have no right to kick us out of here. If there's someone that should be driven away, it should be you." After saying that, Alice said to the police, "This woman was no longer part of our family a long time ago. Weren't you just talking about trespassing? Well, that woman is trespassing in our house. You should arrest her." "Alice, that's enough. Your father owns this house and Rachel is your sister. Your father has not made a decision yet, you can't. Caroline tried to stop her daughter from talking. Alice turned to Jack, her eyes filled with tears. Dad, are you really just going to sit idly by and watch Rachel walk all over me like that? Look at me. I'm injured. The second she got here, she has been plotting to drive us out of our house. Who the hell does she think she is?
Jack was livid. He had been trying to suppress his anger since Rachel stepped in. Now that he had seen his wife and daughter being pushed around, Jack could no longer hold himself back. Rachel, get the hell out of my house. You're not welcome here. Those words rang in everyone's ears.
Rachel felt a pang in her heart, and for a second she was almost overwhelmed by sadness. But those emotions somehow felt a bit strange to her at the moment. Before she could even begin to think about it, Alice reached out to grab her wrist, intending to drag her out of the house. Rachel's eyes darkened. She twisted her own hand to grab Alice's wrist even tighter and snapped it. The crisp sound of cracking bones signified that her wrist had been dislocated. Rachel Bennett. Jack growled. The policemen's faces darkened. They had no idea that Rachel would attack others in front of them. The faint suspicion of whether she could really hurt others had now dissipated. Rachel let go of Alice's wrist, glaring at her. Afterwards, she turned to the police and asked, "Sir, you saw what just happened, right? She tried to attack me and I defended myself. Isn't that right?"
You dislocated her wrist. That's excessive use of self-defense. One of the policemen walked forward, intending to arrest Rachel. He thought that if he didn't teach her a lesson, it would bring shame to his honor as a police officer. Rachel wore a faint smile as Andy stood in front of her with open arms. According to the 20th term of the criminal law of our country, if a person's use of self-defense caused great injury, then it is classified as an excessive use of force. Miss Alice Jenkins tried to hurt my client, Miss Rachel Bennett. My client made sure that she wouldn't get hurt, for she didn't know what her assailant, Alice Jenkins, would do to her next. In addition, my client did not cause excessive damage to Miss Jenkins. Andy put on a stern expression and continued, "Therefore, good sir, what my client has done is within the bounds of self-defense." "Who are you?" The policeman stopped in his tracks, eyeing Andy up and down. As a matter of fact, Andy was right. Alice was the one who started the fight. Although Rachel dislocated Alice's wrist, it was justifiable to say that she only did it to prevent Alice from hurting her more. Andy took out his business card and gave it to the police. "I'm Andy Torres, Miss Bennett's lawyer." The policeman looked at the business card and asked, "I seem to recall that you were the one who called us, right?" "Yes." Despite being under the police's stern gaze, Andy showed no sign of timidity. He just nodded at them firmly, looking them dead in the eye. "Did you call the police to report that your client had hurt someone?" the other policeman asked in disbelief. "What kind of weirdos have we come across today? Is this lawyer trying to report his own client?" "Of course not," said Andy. "Then why did you ask us to come here?" The police had now lost their patience, and they sounded more and more impatient. If they weren't concerned that something might happen later on, they would have left already. "The reason I called you over has been made clear by my client," replied Andy. "What?" the policeman asked in unison. "Officers, please drive these people out," he added. Afterwards, Andy handed a document to the police. "Drive them out on the grounds of trespassing."
Chapter 8. The police took the document from Andy's hand. When they read its contents, their faces changed completely. Caroline glanced at the document as well, and her intuition told her that the document was bad news for them. She glanced at Jack meaningfully. "Jack."
"Rachel, I gave you a chance. How long are you planning to harass us? Get the fuck out of our house and leave us alone." Jack strode forward and tried to grab Rachel. But before he could touch her, the two policemen barred his path. All of a sudden, Jack stopped in his tracks.
Caroline was surprised at the turn of events, but she managed to force a smile. "Officers, this man is the owner of the house."
"Are you Jack Jenkins?" one of the policemen asked seriously. Jack had to suppress his anger because he was talking to uniformed officers. "Yes, I am," he answered. "What is the name of your ex-wife?" Jack frowned at that he never expected that the police would ask that question out of the blue. "Elisa Bennett, but she's been dead for years." "Is this girl your daughter with your dead wife?" the policeman asked, gesturing at Rachel. Jack looked at the policeman, trying to figure out why they were asking such questions. "That's right." "In that case, she's right," said the policeman. "Do you want to leave the house by yourselves, or do you want us to drag you away?" Everyone was stunned to hear that.
Caroline hurried forward, still wearing a forced smile. "Sir, what are you trying to say? Why did you ask us that question? We've been living here for 20 years. What reason do you have?"
"Reason? You're trespassing on a private property," the policeman shouted.
Trespassing? Caroline turned pale as she looked at Jack. Even Jack didn't understand what was going on.
He frowned and said confidently, "This has been my home for 20 years. How could you say that I am trespassing? Don't you get it? This lady here, Rachel Bennett, owns this villa." After saying that, he showed the document to Jack.
"How is that possible?" Alice screamed after hearing that revelation. She was about to grab the document from the policeman's hand, but she was halted by the man's steely gaze. The document was a last will and testament. It wasn't the original copy, but it was enough to prove that Rachel was the owner of this house. The police thought that Rachel's request to drive her family away was inconceivable, but according to the law, Jack and the others were trespassing in her house, and she was well within her rights to drive them out. "But that's impossible. Dad, say something. Tell them this house belongs to you."
With a livid expression, Jack fell silent. It seemed that he acquiesced to this turn of events. This house had once belonged to Elisa. She never had the time to distribute her properties when she died, so Jack assumed that he would receive her properties after her death. That was what he had believed, until just now. Who would have thought that Elisa left a will? On top of that, the will was not made public until more than 10 years later. Caroline clenched her fists, her eyes brimming with anger. Elisa had orchestrated all of this.
Rachel appeared from behind Andy and yawned. "Officers, please drive them out for me. Thanks for taking the time to come here. And Mr. Torres, please help me take care of the rest. My eyelids feel heavy now, so I'm going to sleep. Thanks for your help."
"Don't worry, I'll take care of it," said Andy.
Rachel nodded, glancing at the necklace in her hand with satisfaction. Afterwards, she flashed them a smile before she went upstairs. The sight of Rachel's complacent face made Alice feel the pain coming from her wounds. "Dad," she growled.
Jack was speechless. Looking at the will made him angrier with every passing second.
At this moment, anxiety grew in Alice's heart. Why, this is my home. How could it be Rachel's? How dare she? Everything belongs to me. Upon seeing that Alice was about to attack Rachel again, the policeman stopped her.
"Miss Jenkins, if you try to hurt Miss Bennett again, we will arrest you on the spot." Andy stepped in and played the video he had recorded for the police. "Sir, as you can see in this video, Miss Alice Jenkins here started the fight. The video will show you how she got her wounds." Alice was shocked to hear that. "What video?" Andy didn't respond to her question. He just glanced at Alice, Caroline, and Jack one by one. Now, Alice felt even more agitated.
"Did he record what happened just now?" "No. I can't let the police see it." Alice panicked. She lost the ability to think about her actions, and she instinctively tried to grab Andy's phone.
The policeman warned her, Miss Jenkins, do you want us to arrest you for obstruction of justice?
Caroline immediately grabbed Alice. Sir, I'm sorry about my daughter's behavior. She's just being silly.
Yes, she is. After watching the video, the policeman put on a stern expression. Intentional injury, slander, illegal possession of others' property, and repeated offenses, Alice Jenkins. We are placing you under arrest for those charges. After saying that, the police took out a set of handcuffs. With no room to resist, Alice's arms were cuffed behind her back. The look on Caroline's and Jack's faces changed dramatically. Meanwhile, inside the CEO's office of the Sullivan Group, a knock could be heard from the door. "Come in," said Victor. As soon as Ivan heard him speak, he entered the office, put down the document on Victor's desk, and said, "Mr. Sullivan, something happened to Ms. Bennett's." Victor didn't even raise his head when he interrupted. "I've already divorced her, that I don't have anything to do with her, even if she's dead. It's not about Miss Bennett." Ivan hesitated for a moment and continued, "It's about Alice Jenkins, Rachel's half-sister." Upon hearing that, Victor looked at Ivan in the eye. "Alice?" Ivan nodded. "Rachel went back to the Alice's place this morning. She called the police to drive Alice and her parents out for trespassing. During the process, Alice must have done something to Rachel, but that's why the police arrested Alice, and Rachel has told her lawyer to sue Alice. They're demanding her to issue a public apology in a newspaper and kneel at the gate of her house for 3 days and nights. Otherwise, Rachel will not withdraw the lawsuit, and Alice will be sent to jail." The veins on Victor's temples began to show. "Alice might not be able to accompany you to the dinner party tonight. Shall I arrange another female companion for you?" Ivan asked respectfully. "No, that's okay," Victor replied. He slammed the pen in his hand on the table, gritted his teeth, and ordered, "Send someone to bring Rachel here." Ivan was surprised by his command. "Are you saying that?" A cold smile appeared on Victor's face. "Didn't Rachel do something to Alice just because I was going to take her to the dinner party? This isn't new. She has done something more horrible than this in the past. Really thought that I'd be able to get rid of her after the divorce. But, well, in that case, I'll bring her along as she wishes." Levan's heart sank. It seemed that Victor was going to make Rachel's life miserable tonight. Chapter 9. Bang! All of a sudden, 2 muscular men kicked the door open and broke in. A maid followed them in with a panicked look. "Miss Bennett, they broke into the house all of a sudden. I couldn't stop them." "Who are you?" Andy looked at the intruders. "Miss Bennett, you're coming with us," said one of them. Once he finished talking, they walked past Andy and tried to catch Rachel. However, she managed to avoid them. Their appearances alone showed that the intruders were agile and capable fighters. Rachel wouldn't be able to escape from them because her fighting skills weren't extensive, and she clearly wouldn't win over these sturdy men. Andy shielded her with his body at once. "What are you planning to do with her?" he asked. "Get out of my way," the intruder warned him. "This is trespassing. It's illegal, believe it or not." Before Andy could reach the end of his sentence, he felt a cold, hard steel being pressed against his forehead. The intruder was pressing a gun against his head at this moment. Beads of sweat broke out of Andy's forehead as he felt his heart racing and his face turning pale. Through the curtains, the sunlight reached the gun, and it reflected the silver light.
Rachel's eyes widened. "I'm coming with you, just let him go."
Andy looked at the men in black and stammered, "Miss Bennett."
She understood why he was worried, so she nodded to reassure him. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. They're not gonna hurt me." Right after she said that, Rachel's eyes fell on the brooches on the chests of the intruders. The brooches were teardrop-shaped gems made of obsidian. It was the symbol of the security agency owned by the Sullivan Group. Only one man was capable of mobilizing them, and it was none other than Victor.
The gun was still pressed against Andy's head, but he saw how composed Rachel was, so he decided to drop his worries for now and trust her. Seconds later, Rachel and the intruders left.
Chapter 10. Rachel was led into a room where a woman claiming to be Victor's secretary, Eva, asked her to sit down and began to apply makeup and style her hair. When she was done, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Rachel had no idea what Victor wanted from her. All she could do was sit and wait. There was a knock on the door and Eva walked over to open it. Rachel was sitting with her back to the door, but through the mirror she could see the two men who brought her here standing on the doorway. "It's time," one of the men said curtly. "She will be ready in a few minutes," Eva nodded. Rachel drummed her fingers on the table as Eva closed the door and came over. "Miss Bennet, time to change into your outfit for the night." Rachel turned to Eva, blinking in astonishment. "Who asked you to dress me up?" "Mr. Sullivan, of course," Eva said, her polite yet weirdly unsettling smile never leaving her lips. "Do you know why?" Rachel was desperate for the slightest piece of information about what Victor had in store for her. Eva averted her gaze and made a sweeping gesture. "The staff here respects the customer's privacy." Rachel looked at Eva searchingly for a while longer, then stood up and walked towards the fitting room. A single dress was hanging inside. Rachel's eyes hardened at the sight of it, her expression inscrutable. She stayed there staring at the dress for a few moments. It was all clear now what Victor wanted from her. This flimsy piece of clothing was all the proof she needed. Eva's voice came from behind her. "Mr. Sullivan asked me to pass on a message. He wanted you to know that your lawyer's firm doesn't have a license. He also wanted me to tell you that he wouldn't mind informing the authorities on your behalf." Rachel's heart almost stopped beating. She had really underestimated Victor. How on earth did he find out so many things about Andy in such a short time? His message was clearly a threat. If she didn't go along with his plans, Victor would make sure that Andy paid the price. Not to mention that Rachel would have trouble with the will. She could end up losing her inheritance, which meant she was at Victor's mercy. Rachel gritted her teeth as she looked up at the hateful dress. Clenching her fists, she said in a low voice, "I'll put it on."
As night fell, the wild side of the city began to stir. The Crown Club was one of the most exclusive establishments, frequented only by the elite of the city. In a private room on the 3rd floor, a waiter knocked on the door twice before cautiously walking inside, carrying a decanter of red wine. He bowed in respect and started pouring the red liquid into elegant crystal goblets. "Mr. Sullivan, you broke the rules. We agreed that everyone should bring a date, but you're the only one here without a date," said the middle-aged man sitting on the other side of the sofa. He had his arm around the waist of a cute blonde girl as he accepted a glass of wine from the waiter. The man took a sip of his drink and went on. "You are ruining our fun, you know. I might start thinking that you are not a man of your word, and that'd be a bad start for our business dealings." At these words, Ivan, who was standing by the door, looked up. The man that spoke was a renowned businessman, one that Victor wanted to work with. He was also the host of this party. This business deal was critical to the Sullivan Group's profit from the next quarter of the year. It was a project that would cost billions of dollars of investment, so Victor had to attend the party in person. Ivan's eyes never left the businessman. So arrogant. Even if the Sullivan Group was in search of investors, this man's company wasn't the only choice. Leaning against the sofa, Victor stayed completely expressionless, ignoring the provocation. He sipped his wine, looking completely at ease. The businessman's face darkened when he saw that his words had no effect whatsoever. It seemed that Victor didn't take him seriously. He had never been treated like this before. Other companies always beg for a chance to cooperate with him. Don't you agree, Mr. Sullivan? The businessman huffed, unable to hold his temper any longer. Victor lowered his glass and looked at the man. Mr. Guzman, you are too impatient, he drawled. Trevor Guzman narrowed his eyes, but remained silent. Taking a look at the message he had just received, Ivan strode to Victor's side and whispered in his ear, Ms. Bennett is ready. Something sinister flashed in Victor's eyes. He smiled and announced, Mr. Guzman, why don't we take it up a notch? Spice up the game a bit. Spice it up, you say? Well, switching dates would do the trick. Don't you agree? As soon as Victor finished his sentence, the door opened and a waiter came in, followed by Rachel. The waiter bowed and left the room, closing the door behind him. As Rachel entered, she heard what Victor had said. Trevor turned to look at Rachel, and his eyes lit up. Even in the dim lighting, the elegance and poise emanating from Rachel was obvious. Her elfin face and the way her dress hugged her figure made her look sexy in the classiest way possible. Trevor was lost. Trevor's gaze became more and more intense as he stared at Rachel. Who are you? Trevor asked in a hoarse voice and swallowed hard. Rachel felt uneasy under Trevor's obvious attention and couldn't stop the disgust that flashed in her eyes. Victor didn't even turn to look at Rachel. When he saw Trevor's expression, he put his goblet on the table and put on a broad smile. This is my date for tonight, Mr. Guzman. Now, what do you say? Shall we change the rules? Trevor grinned from ear to ear and immediately agreed. Absolutely. What a wonderful idea. It will be fun. Let's do it. Chapter 11. I didn't expect you'd be in the company of such a beauty. Trevor raised his head and took a sip of his wine. He reluctantly dragged his eyes away from Rachel and turned to Victor with an uncertain look on his face. Were you serious before? About the game? You were surely just messing with me. Not at all. As long as you can charm my date away from me. She is yours. Victor's lips formed a cold smile, his eyes challenging the man before him. Trevor couldn't hide his excitement. He couldn't wait to start the game. So he looked at Victor and said slowly, well, Victor knew exactly what Trevor's look meant. He glanced at Ivan sideways, giving him a pointed look. Ivan took the hint and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a document he had prepared in advance and handed it to Trevor. This is the contract drawn up by Mr. Sullivan himself. Trevor's good sense had already flown out the window the moment he learned he had a chance with Rachel. At that point, he was so obsessed with her that he took the pen and signed the contract without reading a single line. Let the game begin, Mr. Guzman, Ivan said, returning the signed contract to his briefcase. Victor grabbed his suit jacket from the armrest of the sofa, turned around, and walked towards the door, Ivan on his trail. As he crossed the room, he finally got a good look at Rachel. His mind went blank for a moment. No wonder Trevor had lost his mind over her. She looked ravishing tonight. She was wearing a close-fitting, strapless dress that fit her figure like a glove. She looked much different from the exhausted, drained woman Victor remembered. Her makeup was different too. It was simple and elegant, giving her a fresh, natural look. Victor's eyes lingered on Rachel for a while, and he felt a surge of unease. He firmly believed he hated her so much that even a single glance could make him feel uncomfortable, disgusted even. Victor had always been in control of his emotions, and he hated the impact that woman had on him. Rachel had been quiet the whole time, but when he walked past her, she grabbed his sleeve, stopping him from leaving the room. Victor gave her a look full of poison and shrugged off her hand, looking disgusted by her touch. What do you want? Too late for regrets, Victor sneered, looking down at her.
Rachel tried to ignore Trevor's hungry eyes roaming all over her body. She lowered her voice in an attempt to keep her anger at bay. What is that supposed to mean? You were the one who said. Before she could finish, Victor's face hardened. He grabbed Rachel's chin, forcing her to look straight into his eyes. Rachel was startled by this unexpected move. The pain on her chin was so intense that she staggered backwards until her back hit the cold wall.
Victor's face was just a few inches away from hers, his voice cold and piercing as he whispered menacingly, "Isn't that what you wanted? Huh? Drop the innocent act. I don't buy it."
I am not.
Do you really think I will ever believe you again? I thought you had learned your lesson, but I forgot what a stupid bitch you are. You'll never learn, he whispered in Rachel's ear, his voice full of contempt.
Rachel wanted to retort, but his grip on her chin felt like a vice. Uttering a single word would be torture. Her face turned pale and beads of sweat started forming on her forehead. When Victor spoke again, she felt his hot breath on her neck and a shiver ran down her spine.
Alice couldn't be here with me tonight because she was taken to the police station. It seems that I underestimated your dirty tricks. Didn't you do all this just to be my date to the party tonight? And now you are pretending you know nothing.
Rachel frowned at his words. She finally understood what was going on. It was all a misunderstanding. The truth was she didn't want anything to do with Victor. She didn't give a shit about this stupid party or who would be Victor's date for the night. Victor seemed to take Rachel's silence as an admission of guilt. He leaned closer and whispered in her ear, in a voice so low that only she would hear him.
Now, time to get what you wanted so desperately.
Rachel's eyes widened in fear. This couldn't be good. Before she could react, though, Victor let go of her chin and, grabbing her by the arm, he pushed her towards Trevor. Then he stood there, one hand in his pocket and a smug look on his face.
Mr. Guzman, I'll leave my date in your very capable hands. Of course, I'll take good care of her. Trevor didn't know what had just happened between Victor and Rachel, so he assumed that the man had simply been telling her to serve him well. He nodded to Victor and rubbed his hands together as he walked towards Rachel. Completely expressionless, Victor turned around and left the room with Ivan by his side. Just as the door was about to close behind them, Rachel's voice reached him.
You're gonna regret this.
Victor still hadn't left the building. Instead, he had booked another private room. Standing next to the door, Ivan looked quietly at Victor, who was sitting on the sofa, making some business calls. He was really confused at his boss's behavior. The contract was signed, and there's nothing else to do here. Why was his boss still here? Why booked another room? It was as if his boss was waiting for something. But what? Or who? Was it Miss Bennett? No, that's not possible. These thoughts flashed through Ivan's mind, but he couldn't make any sense of them. He knew how much Victor hated Rachel. His boss would have gladly killed her 1,000 times over. So, the thought that Victor was waiting for her was completely absurd. But before Ivan could figure it out, his phone rang. When he looked at the name that appeared on the screen, he frowned and hit the button to answer the call. In a flash, Ivan's eyes widened in shock. He hung up and reported to his boss with a serious look on his face. I was just informed that Mr. Guzman is now in the hospital.